Good day, everyone. I am Kirsten Joy A. Ladaga, and for this discussion, I will be having Anglo literature. There are 8 major literary periods that composes Anglo literature. And for this discussion, we will have Old English literature, the Middle English, the English Renaissance, the Neoclassical period, Romantic period, Victorian period, Edwardian period, and lastly, the Modern period. So we shall travel to the time when the Romans have invaded the tribes of Celtics from England. They are often invaded or bullied by the other tribes. So without repeated situations, it led to the Celts to think that they need to ask for help. The Anglo-Saxons, being a part of the external tribes of the Celts, responded to their call. However, it opened doors or gave opportunity for the Anglo-Saxons to take advantage of those who treated them as their kauri. That's when the history of literature under Old English have begun. The common themes displayed from the collection of works revolve around religious or biblical themes. Reason is, during this period, the Christianity was already widespread, not just in England but for other countries as well. In this, we may quote to Pope Gregory with the help of Saint Augustine. Now, for the genres or styles, we have Bible translations, chronicles, epic poetry, hagiographies, and sermons. Now, for the writers and works of the Old English period, I have listed here three famous writers, and those are Caedmon for his Caedmon's hymn, Genesis, Exodus, and Daniel. The second one is Cynewulf for his The Faith of the Apostles, and Bede for his Ecclesiastical History of English People. And overall, the most famous epic for the whole period is Beowulf. So the Middle English period, also called the Anglo-Norman period, was reigned by the then King William the Normandy, who is said to be the deceitful king. This is also associated with the fall of the Roman Empire. With that fall, it caused the spread of plague, famine, and diseases. It is also in this period that the classes of people was established. Thus, the establishment of feudalism. So, I know some of you may wonder, why establish? The main reason for that is because for the king, which is King William of Normandy, he thinks that he needs a strong government, though and while he is away. So he make use of those money that he is to take from the people, and with that money, he will use it to maintain control over his territory. And again, with that money or funds, he funded military campaigns and built castles. The feudalism shows the walls there is to every positions and roles that people hold in the government. Under this period, there are other sub-periods, and one of these is the age of Chaucer. So in the age or during the age of Chaucer, rose the three estates or the classes of people. So we have the clergy, the ruler, and the local people. The clergy are those people who speak Latin, and their main purposes on the kingdom was to pray and to save everyone's soul. The second one is the ruler. The main difference with the ruler to the clergy is that they speak French. Also, their role is to protect and give justice to the people. So if it needs them to fight, they would just to secure their auxiliaries. Lastly, the commoners or the local people. The language used by them is English, and it is their function to provide service to all of the people. They are the common workers, if we would relate to the present time. For the characteristics of literature in this period, there are four observable topics: topics of heroism, topics of romance, of idealized behavior, and the Christian message, while religious and romance as its themes. The genre and styles that are present are allegory, ballads, Bible translations, music, poetry, and narrative prose. The famous writers of that time involves, of course, Geoffrey Chaucer with his Canterbury Tales and William Langland with his Piers Plowman. For the High Middle Age, we have Summa Theologica by Saint Thomas Aquinas, the life of Saint Francis de Assisi from Saint Bonaventure, the Nibelungenlied, and the Song of Roland. For the Late Middle Age, we have Canterbury Tales by Sir Geoffrey Chaucer, The Morte d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory, The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, and Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So Renaissance or Renaissance is a French word that means rebirth. In this period, it is called by this name because at that time, people started taking an interest in the learning of ancient times, in particular, the learning of ancient Greece and Rome. So, the texts that was made during this period is intended to be performed in public, be it in plays, masks, and some backs of poetry. During the Renaissance, literature flourished primarily in Italy, France, Spain, and England. Thanks to the invention of the printing press and the early modern rise of the middle class, which possessed the time and wealth to partake in literacy. So with that, literature spread more quickly into a wider audience than ever before. Now, for the characteristics of literature during the Renaissance period, we have listed here four descriptions. The first one is the rise of Hellenism, because during those time they fell in love with anything that is concerning Greek or the Greece. Next is the diffusion of new learning, because during that period, it caused the people to have further studies, and with further studies, of course, it changed their outlooks in life and in the world. Next is the rise of humanism. In this time, man is treated as the center of the universe, not the sun, not the earth, but the man. Next is the emphasis on individualism. Because they grew love for anything Greek. The Greek literature affected the people so much that it left a mark of worldliness and individualism. So humanism, being the keynote of the Renaissance, it gives emphasis on the dignity of human beings and the importance of the present life. This term also denotes an outlook that emphasizes human capabilities and concerns. The two most visible consequences of this outlook are secular appreciation, which includes appreciation for humans and the human world, and critical thought. For the genre and styles, we have tragedy, comedy, and use of vernacular. So these styles and genres are dominant during this period. Now, for the famous writers we have here, of course, who would forget Shakespeare? We also have Christopher Marlowe, Ben Jonson, Fletcher, and Beaumont. We also included here Thomas More with his Utopia, Francis Bacon of Studies, which is included in the essays. We also have here Edmund Spenser for his The Fairy Queen, and Martin Luther with his 95 Theses. For the works, we also have the Book of Common Prayer and the works of William Shakespeare. So we are now down to the fourth period, which is the Neoclassical period. The Neoclassical period is divided into two other sub-periods or age. That is the Age of Restoration versus the Age of Reason. We will begin with the Age of Restoration. So it is before the Age of Restoration that the Civil War has begun, when the monarch and the parliament, which should work with the other, was instantly changed by the then King James I. The monarch was headed by him, on the other hand, the parliament by Oliver Cromwell. This war ended when King James I was beheaded during the battle, and Cromwell, with his short-term leadership, began the Commonwealth, or the Interregnum Age, where there is no king to rule the kingdom. However, as I have mentioned, it only lasted for a small period of time because they are not that skilled. The leadership and the combat skills perhaps, which was then a must-have of a leader. So after that the Interregnum Age has ended, a new age, which is now the Age of Restoration, has emerged. This period was led by the King Charles II. It was called Restoration because all of those forms of entertainment which was removed was finally restored. If you could still remember, before the Restoration Age, Puritanism has emerged and they have made a huge difference in terms of living. All of those that they think are for worldly pleasures and does not really honoring God or is not for Him was removed. All those fancies and riches were converted into simplicity. But as I was saying a while ago, it was then restored during King Charles II's reign. So we can also call his form of government the Merry Monarch. Theaters, which were before put to close, was reopened. He accepted limited income from parliaments. He is very tolerant. However, he is an irresponsible and less skilled one among the previous kings who have ruled. Now, for the characteristics of literature during the Age of Restoration, we have the New Classicism and the French influence in drama. Going to the themes, we have authority and control, religion and faith, and fear and persecution. Now, for the genre and styles, we have pastoral, mock heroic, and the use of heroic couplet. So, heroic couplet are two successive lines of verse, equal in length, and with rhyme. It is also in this period that there are lots of poets and schools of poetry that has emerged, and one of this is the metaphysical school of poetry. And the metaphysical school of poetry break away from the convention. They uses simple diction, common speech words and cadences, actual life imagery, arguments with the poet's beloved, with God, and with himself. So we know John Donne, and he is considered as the leading figure of the metaphysical school of poetry. Now for the Age of Reason. The neoclassical period is believed to be the Age of Reason, having its characteristics that fall under reason and logic that both come along. The writers of this era focused on giving justification behind something's existence or so, and they also underlie the idea of critical thinking, using every drop of human capability to understand and shed light on certain things in form of reason. No attachments or indication of showing emotions, as it was meant to emphasize the ability of a human to use wit. Now, for the famous writers, we have here John Milton, John Bunyan, John Dryden. We also have Jonathan Swift, Andrew Marvell, Alexander Pope, Henry Fielding, Danielle Defoe, Jane Austen. John Milton is known for his Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained. John Bunyan with his Pilgrim's Progress, and John Dryden. The Romantic period is characterized by its return to the nature. Due to changes happened in the society and the environment, this period tend to revolt against logic and rationalism of Age of Enlightenment. And it was greatly influenced by the ideas during French Revolution. The ideology that has been known in the era is the Romanticism. Romanticism, which designates a literary and philosophical theory that tends to see the individual as the very center of all life and all experience. The underlying themes revolves around nature, beauty, imagination, and feelings or emotion. It is visible that in this period, the Romantic writers choose to make use of a simple and plain language. It is also in the same period wherein free verse has risen, giving the writers freedom to express their feelings, far from the strictness of the writings made on the previous periods, thus the rejection of heroic couplet. The famous writers of the period includes the Lake Poets, which is consisting of three members, namely Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Southey, who are fellow neighbors and friends living near the Lake District in the United Kingdom. They have collaborated with few works which has become known not just in their own country but from the whole world. That includes lyrical ballads and biographia literaria. But aside from them, there are also other Romantic writers, and those are Robert Burns with his work To a Mouse, William Blake with his Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience, Lord Byron with his Don Juan, Percy Bysshe Shelley by his Ozymandias, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley with her Frankenstein, John Keats with his Ode on a Grecian Urn, and Walter Scott with his Ivanhoe. Edgar Allan Poe. He is an American writer, known as a poet and critic, but most famous as the first master of the short story form, especially tales of the mystery. He is famous for his The Raven and The Cask of Amontillado. Next, Washington Irving. He is a historian, biographer, and diplomat. He was also the first American writer to gain international attention. He began his writing career by creating satires about New York society. His known works are Rip Van Winkle, The Legend of the Sleepy Hollow, which are both included in the sketchbook, and A History of New York. And last, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He is one of the most widely read American poets of the 19th century. From 1835 to 1854, he was Smith Professor of Modern Languages at Harvard. Recognized for his Paul Revere's Ride, The Voices of the Night, and Evangeline. This period is named after the reign of Queen Victoria, the Britain's longest reigning monarch.
This period is widely known for the stability and prosperity for Britain. The Victorian period of English literature began with the accession of Queen Victoria to the throne in 1837, and it lasted until she died in 1901. In general, Victorian literature deals with the issues and problems of the day. Common themes present in the writings of this period discusses about industrial revolution, class tensions, feminist movements. It also discusses about the Darwin's theory of evolution and political and social reform. For the writers, we have Charles Dickens, Rudyard Kipling, Alfred Lord Tennyson, and Elizabeth Barrett Browning. For the famous writers and works, of course, we won't forget George Eliot with her Middlemarch, Thomas Hardy with his Tess of the Ubervilles, Robert Louis Stevenson with his The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Louis Carroll with his Alice Adventures in Wonderland, the Bronte sisters, Charlotte and Emily with their Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, Robert Browning with his My Last Duchess, Matthew Arnold with his Dover Beach, and Oscar Wilde with his The Importance of Being Earnest. He succeeded to the throne as Edward VII following Victoria's death on January 22, 1901, and was crowned on August 9, 1902. His reign did much to restore luster to a monarchy that had shone somewhat dimly during Victoria's long seclusion as a widow. During this period, the use of metaphors to share ideas of subversion is distinguished in the works of the writers. Also, they dealt with the anxiety towards technological advances. And of course, we cannot also avoid the influences of the Victorian period, which can still be seen in this era. There is also a display of imagism and futurism. For the famous writers and works, we have For the modern period, the writers are capable of being curious, and to achieve a new and unique outputs, lean on the side of experimenting with forms. Now, these forms and contents reflect modern life's confusion and abrupt changes that do not seem to align to human want, such as a great change as it was falling under the changes that tend to overlap the lines of being pleasant, leading to changes in modern life that are kind of chaotic in a sense. Here, expositions and resolutions for stories or written literary works are taken away, mainly having its theme being implied rather than only stated. Its theme revolved around the idea of alienation, maybe about how modern life is quite miserable for some, that they felt that part of society. It also showed the vast relationship of humans, or is man to himself, to society, or to relationships that tend to be ill or distorted in some ways. Although there are lots of writers and writings we can count on this era, the two of the most outstanding are here. We have William Faulkner, who is an American novelist and short story writer famous for his work The Sound and the Fury. The novel was published in 1929. and it details the destruction and downfall of the aristocratic Compton family from four different points of view. Faulkner's fourth novel, The Sound and the Fury, is notable for its non-linear plot structure and its unconventional narrative style. And of course, David Herbert Lawrence, or D.H. Lawrence as we may call. He is an American author of novels, short stories, poems, plays, essays, travel books, and letters. Known for his novel Lady Chatterley's Lover, which was first published in England in 1932. This last of Lawrence's novels reflect the author's belief that men and women must overcome the deadening restrictions of industrialized society and follow their instincts to passionate love.